れはキング・オブ・ザ・ヒル。でもこの渦巻きとかですね、身柄断層の回なんかがこういろいろ合わさって、なんか一つのストーリーが、繰り広げられてまして、なんか面白いですね。
The doctor's office is a strange and magical, if not hopelessly confusing place. In the modern day especially, there's always some strange piece of machinery being deployed, and they never really explain to you what's going on. They just casually speak to you while they sit there and wipe down some Cybertronian piece of equipment that will supposedly help them measure the amount of times you piss in a day or whatever. And you just go along with it. They're just like, okay, step in the device so we can measure the diameter of your ass cheeks, but don't lean to the left, otherwise the particle waves being used by the device will cross and the entirety of Michigan will be nuked off the planet. And you're just like, oh, okay, I guess, man. So being afraid of going to the doctor is kind of understandable, especially when going to places like the dentist where you can't really see what's going on, you just have to lay there and get poked. I had to have surgery on my eyes before, which is a surgery that you have to be awake for, and you can't really see anything but vague shadows and shapes during the whole thing and have really no sense of how much time is passing or what's happening around you. You just hear the doctors talking and medical equipment noises. It felt like I was in the fucking Jaunt. But this allows for some pretty interesting horror stories. It's an opportunity to tap into a very real fear that many people have, and the story I want to talk about today taps into not only this fear, but another one as well. See, there are all kinds of different horror. There's body horror and cosmic horror, there's psychological horror and supernatural horror, and every type of horror has its niche somewhere, because what is not scary to some is absolutely terrifying to others. For me personally, there is one type of horror that disturbs me the most, and one of the masters of this type of horror is our old pal Junji Ito. That's right, El Juanjo is back in action here on the channel, and today I want to talk about a story that taps into one of my biggest phobias, and that is the fear of being trapped. The quote-unquote fate worse than death comes in many forms, and for Ito, it seems to always manifest in the form of losing your autonomy, being trapped, but remaining fully conscious and awake. Like being trapped inside of a giant sea monster with transparent skin, but its internal ecosystem is keeping you alive, so you just have to stare out at the depths of the ocean with no end in sight. Or being stuck in a hole that is your exact size and is slowly deforming your body. Or having to go outside and interact with society when all you want to do is stay holed up in your bedroom all day and goon to your Nikkei poles. The point being that Junji Ito seems to have a special talent for creating these sort of horrifying scenarios, and the story that brings that concept down to its absolute most basic form is Junji Ito's Fixed Face. Or as its official English name calls it, Face Firmly in Place.
Huh?
Oh lord. Yeah, Viz Media titles for a lot of Junji Ito stories are just never really as good as the fan translations. They seem to Funimation it a bit, as far as I understand, where instead of just translating the titles directly, they will give them a new title that just, I guess, makes a bit more sense in English to them. And usually they're not bad, I just tend to think that the translations of the original titles just sound so much better. Like Splatterfilm being changed to Smashed, or Hellstar Ramina being changed to just Ramina. And Billions alone is a fine title. It's actually a great title. But man, Army of One is such a good title for this story. And of course, Fixed Face was changed to Face Firmly in Place. I don't really know if there's a great title for this story. Fixed Face isn't amazing either, but it's better than what Viz came up with. But who knows, maybe the Viz Media title is much closer to the actual original title. I don't know, I didn't look it up. Fixed Face was published as a bonus story with Junji Ito's Frankenstein, which of course we eventually got in the West as part of the Junji Ito Masterpiece Collection from Viz. And that's really all I have to say about its history. I believe it was first published in 2000, but the information I could find came from the Junji Ito fandom page, so obviously take it with a fucking mountain of salt. Okay, enough of the theatrics, let's talk about the plot. And very quickly, if at any point you find that you're enjoying my yapping, then a like on the video would be massively appreciated. And if you really like my nonsense, then don't forget to subscribe. We talk about horror manga one-shots here on this channel, despite what the rest of the channel will tell you. But just don't look at those, they don't count. And members of any tier also get an unscripted little extra video with each upload. Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening to my shameless self-promotion. Let's get back to the plot. So a quick note, I'm going to be going off the official translation by Viz Media. Why does this matter? Because there are small differences in some of the dialogue between the official translation and the most popular and well-known fans translation that kind of changes some of the context. Okay, so what happens in this? So, in the title panel, we see the eyes of someone who looks rather distressed. We then see that they belong to a woman named Yagawa, who is looking at, apparatus, claiming that the device is making her feel uneasy. A doctor instructs Yagawa to sit down, and she inquires as to what the chair is actually for. In the next panel, we learn that this is actually a dental appointment, and the doctor explains that the device and the chair are to help capture an image of her face to gather orthodontic data. Yagawa then asks about the metal spikes that look like they would just stab you in the side of the fucking head. The doctor explains that those metal bits are inserted into the ears to lock the patient's face in place, before kind of rudely telling her to just sit down. Yagawa sits down and is asked to sit still as the doctor lines up the metal spikes with her ears, and a click, and Yagawa's face is now fixed firmly in place. The doctor moves behind the desk and prepares to take the photo. As Yagawa sits in the chair, she remarks that she can't move at all, and mentions that it feels like she's sitting in a torture device. The doctor then notices that there's no film and steps out to get some more, leaving Yagawa in the device. On the way to get more film, the doctor has a cartoonish trip down a flight of stairs, knocking him out. The other staff notice what happened and call an ambulance. Back in the photographing room, some time has passed and obviously, Dr. Otake still hasn't returned. Growing tired and anxious, Yagawa tries to call out for anyone who might be around. However, the University Dental Hospital is huge and not many people wander around the third floor. Yagawa, now more anxious, begins catastrophizing, terrified that no one is going to come back for her. She starts to panic, screaming for help while grabbing at the device. However, the device has her stuck firmly in place and she can't move an inch, leaving her completely trapped. Eventually, night falls, and the hospital closes, leaving her there alone. Yagawa continues to panic, noting that someone, at some point, has to wander by the room and find her. Calming herself down, she realizes that to get out, she just has to loosen the screw that is holding the device in place. She begins to feel around the device and starts to panic once again, as there doesn't seem to be a screw anywhere to release the device. Her anxiety and panic starts to reach its peak, and she screams for help once again. Yagawa continues to panic. She wants to change position, she wants to lay down. In her panic and wanting to get out, she swings her legs over the top of the device to spin herself around. She screams out in pain, her new position now far more painful. Now at her mental and physical limit, Yagawa can't take it anymore and decides that she is just yanking her ears out of the device. She starts to pull herself out, the skin around her ears stretching, looking as if she's about to completely rip them off. On the next page, we see Yagawa recalling the story of that day to a man sitting with her in a bar, stating that it has been a few years since it happened. The man asks if she actually pulled her head out of the device. Yagawa laughs and says that no, she didn't, because there were 2 metal rods in her ears. There's no way she could have done that without injuring herself, and she was rescued the next day. The man, jokingly I assume, says that he wants to see her ears just to double check that they're okay, and Yagawa grabs her ears and yells that maybe he shouldn't, and probably scares the shit out of her date by screaming at him, but, you know, fucking boundaries, man. The end. So I liked it. It's quirky for sure, and falls into that category that Junji Ito finds himself in from time to time, that being, its premise is really fucking stupid, but your presentation is what sells it. This is a fun one though, and I do genuinely like it. What I especially like about this is that I think it does a great job showing how quickly anxiety can turn to panic and then snowball into hysterics. I love this sort of up and down that Yagawa has, where she starts to panic, then she calms herself down and starts to try and think rationally, only for her panic to shoot back up even farther than it was before, getting to the point where she's so panicked and in so much discomfort that she's not thinking straight and ends up throwing her legs over the top of the machine to try and do something to help the situation. And I also like her face and body language at the beginning of the story. It captures that feeling of being nervous at the doctor's office, but you still just go along with it because you trust them. This is one of the rare Ito stories where there's nothing supernatural going on, but what he does is extremely effective by tapping into a rather mundane fear, and he does it in a far more interesting way. See, horror revolving around doctors and medical equipment and hospitals tend to be rather gory and violent. Things like waking up during surgery or medical equipment going haywire and dismembering someone or something or other in that similar vein. But this specifically works so well because it focuses on the anxiety of being in a doctor's office. It captures that feeling of overthinking and psyching yourself out because of that overthinking whenever you're asked to do some sort of procedure that you're unfamiliar with. A bit of a funny story. My day job involves a lot of me taking people to appointments, and while I've been working on this script, I took a client to a dentist appointment for a procedure that they have had done before. They knew exactly what was going to happen when they went back there. They were familiar with this. They've had it done before. And they still told me they were nervous. And when I asked why, because they've had this done before, they told me that they were nervous because what if it doesn't numb all the way this time? Or the numbing just doesn't work this time, so it hurts more. And that is the exact type of anxiety that this story plays off so well. And on top of that, I think it plays well into that fear of being trapped. And not just being trapped, but also realizing that help is not coming either. Ito also does something in this story which can be rather difficult, that being that he made a compelling story with just one character. Yes, there are other characters in this story, like the doctor and the man she's talking with at the end, but the actual bulk of the narrative is essentially just a single person sitting alone in a room, with a story moving forward through her thoughts and narration. And the story does move. Despite her being literally stuck in a chair, there is a progressive storyline, that being her mental journey of trying to think through her situation. And of course the art, it goes without saying, the art is great. It's Junji Ito. The art looks like Junji Ito. It has all of the same strong points and also all of the same problems that comes with every single one of Ito's works. As far as panels I specifically liked, there actually weren't really any that specifically stuck out to me. My favorite panels, I guess, though, would be this panel here of Yagawa sitting in the chair after first being locked into it. Again, I love the facial expression and the body language. Ito did a great job of capturing the look of someone who is trying really hard not to look nervous. I also like the panel right above it of her getting locked into the device. And I like these panels here of her literally kicking and screaming while she's grabbing onto the device. I'm gonna go off script here for a second to say I also like the ending. I think it's kind of lighthearted and silly in a certain way. A woman, her face was probably disfigured, but it is presented as being kind of goofy. The context that was kind of changed from the fan translation and the original one is that in the official translation from Viz Media, it is presented as she is telling a story of something that happened to her, and then she says that, you know, the way it ended of her ripping herself out of the device is ridiculous, and then she covers her ears to stop him from checking her ears. In the fan translation, she is telling the story as if it is sort of an urban legend of something that happened to some woman at some time, and the man is inquiring about whatever happened to that woman, if we know what happened. And she says that the woman probably never actually ripped herself out of it. She was probably just rescued the next day. And then at this point, he reaches for her ears and jokes about, well, let me see your ears. And then she grabs the side of her head, obviously implying that this wasn't just a myth about a random person, but she was telling a story about herself. I like both endings. I think they're both good. And also, again, they both are meant to kind of be silly. Okay, that's enough positivity for now. Let's start bitching. So I chose this story to talk about because I did find it very compelling, but funnily enough, now that I sit here writing this script, I am realizing that I have kind of limited thoughts on it when it comes to deconstructing it. What I'm getting at is that this is not a completely flawless, perfect story, but at the same time, I don't really have any specific complaints about it. I think the story's biggest issue is honestly something that is only going to be a problem depending on the reader and their tastes. This story kind of relies heavily on suspension of disbelief. And not in a you don't believe in ghosts, but the story has ghosts in it type of way. But it's more in a way where if you think about it too hard, the situation is kind of dumb. And this doesn't seem like a real thing that would happen in the real world, even though it probably could. Like the doctor tripping and falling as if he just slipped on a banana peel and then knocking himself out is kind of cartoonish. But again, it is something that can actually happen. But then the hospital not checking, like, what appointments he has for the rest of the day, and then realizing, oh, he was literally just seeing someone, we should go check on them. Also, what is this device? This archaic piece of machinery? Did this ever exist? Like, genuinely, I am asking, did this ever exist? Because medical equipment for a long time was so strange and unwieldy that I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't think it did. A commenter on one of my community posts actually compared this to the beauty micrometer, which was a device that you would put on and then it would mathematically calculate every single cosmetic flaw of your face, which isn't like super far off. To me, I feel like this device is meant to be sort of an exaggeration of what medical equipment kind of feels like and looks like to non-medical workers, especially if you look at what dental imaging devices look like. And like I said, this stuff does kind of come down to taste and what you're willing to accept. Like, I am in the camp of being able to excuse all of these things because without these things, then there's no story. However, I'm sure there are plenty of you who are of the mindset that if you need ridiculous coincidences and kind of stupid characters to make your story work, then you need to write a better story. So that was Fixed Face, a story that I think takes a very specific type of horror and breaks it down to its most core elements in a rather effective way. But let me know what you guys think. Do you like Fixed Face? Do you think the horror of it works? And if you agree or disagree with any of my points, like if you like any part that I disliked or dislike any part that I like, then let me know why. I would love to have a discussion about this story. And don't let this story scare you away too much. Every medical device does have its purpose. Even if that purpose is just to assign a number to exactly how ugly you are.